part of it is that, we're friends, right? We've known each other for going on 30 years.
Yeah.
Which is a tough number to deal with. But I was thinking about it and I was like, wait, we met in 1995. And it is 2024 right now. So, I didn't, actually, that hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Just, the All-American Singers.
All-American Singers. Just so you guys know, a travel show, singing and dancing.
I was 17 when I started in it.
17.
Yeah. So there were 2 seasons of the All-American Singers because Chaz was in both of them.
Yeah.
Ish. Yeah. Like he was a star in that, right? And so everyone in the group was like, okay, Chaz is gonna do amazing things. Because when we're talking about like the All-American Singers, right? I feel like we all enjoyed like in our own little worlds being the best. Right. We wanted to be stars. We wanted to be like shining lights, right?
Yeah.
And when you feel that light inside of yourself dim, like there is something that needs to change.
Hey, this is Chaz, and welcome to my world from my living room. Today, we're going to talk to Amit Pandya. We're going to talk about our almost 30-year friendship, my love-hate relationship with podcasts, the All-American Singers, the life coach craze, and everything in between. So, sit back, relax, and welcome to my world from my living room.
Hey, what's up, guys? So today we are talking to my good friend, Amit Pandya. We've known each other forever. We're going to talk about how long that's been. I hope it's not as many years as I think it is, but we're going to get right into it. So, Amit, good to have you here.
It's great to be here.
Dude, you're in my living room.
Yeah.
Might I add, again. And this time you're here for my podcast.
I am.
Like, what do you think? I'm doing a podcast.
Yeah.
I hated being that one dude, but I'm like, I figured, man, I may as well.
Yeah.
Well,
what do you mean you may as well? I mean, you have stories to tell. You have things to teach the world.
So
and
there's
teach
millions
yourself.
of other people.
So everyone has a big story.
Well, I mean, I don't know how big my story is. I have a lot of stories, but I don't know what the whole podcast thing is about. I know there's a lot of it's like education based, and there's all these buzzwords and stuff that kind of freaked me out about it. Like, oh, you have to add value to your listeners or your watchers, and you have to do this, and you have to meet all these metrics. I'm like, I just want to talk about things I've experienced, and talk to interesting people and friends of mine, and just kind of hang out at the house.
Yeah.
I don't want a big microphone in my face. I just want to chill.
Exploration can be valuable, right? Exploration, being able to explore sort of your own stories, explore your own journeys. And then from there, I think you're allowed to make this organic, right? You're allowed to make this value creation piece an organic part of this. And there's no reason that you need to have it all figured out. Like when your first season or second season or however you want to split these up.
You know me. You know me,
Yes.
Mr. Perfectionist.
Yes, yeah.
I'm not one to just throw anything out there and see what happens.
Sure.
So I had to do a lot of research. I had to get over myself because I think there were moments where I was like, man, I don't want to look like anybody else because you know me. I've never not wanted to, I don't want to like nobody. I want to be myself. I want to be the authentic article that my mom and I've been raised to be. So there was a moment of clarity. But I was like, I remember when I first told you that I was doing one. You're like, oh my God, you got to have me on because we're going to have so much fun.
I love it. I'm very chatty, very chatty. But I know it's because you have things to say, right? I know that like you try to live authentic life, right? You have people in your life who you love and who you want to support and who you want to inspire, right? And so being able to do that, I think in this particular medium is excellent.
Well, I there was a lot to get me here, but I definitely had you top of mind. But I'm like, I had to get through a whole season to just really figure it out.
Sure.
And essentially talking to a camera. Like you've seen it, yeah? You've seen the podcast.
I absolutely have.
So what do you think about it?
Well, first of all, you got a great voice. I mean, you have a great voice, but because podcasts, you can watch them, sure, but there's something to be said about, going about your day and having someone kind of on your shoulder, like just telling your story, right? And it could be, because I listen to a bunch of podcasts, some where the value is more, it's more specific, I guess, right? Like there are some which are about, space travel and some that are about like ologies. Have you heard this ologies podcast?
No, I haven't.
It's great, where every single one, it's about a different ology. Like
interesting.
like a study of mushrooms, study of light, study of whatever it is, right?
that's
and
cool.
it's this woman just asking questions of experts, right? And so that's great. But I think the best part about a podcast is when you can like learn something new about the person doing the podcast, about whoever they're interviewing, or really about themselves, like as they're going about their day. There's something lovely about it, just working with your day to day.
Yeah. So now being a podcast listener, because I don't know if I've had anyone on that really listens to podcasts enough to know the metrics and how it works and what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
So hearing from your vantage point, the podcast, does mine work and fit in that space?
So, one thing that I feel works is that there is, like, you want to learn more, right? There's always sort of like the next part of the story. You know, in your story, and again, I mean, part of it is that, you know, we're friends, right? We've known each other for going on 30 years.
Yeah.
Which is a tough number to deal with. But I was thinking about it, I was like, wait, we met in 1995. And it is 2024 right now. So yeah, I didn't actually, that hurt my feelings. Just a little bit just now. But like even then, like I know the journey that you've been on, right? And when I was listening, I haven't listened to all of them. I've listened to maybe like half of them, maybe 3/4 of them at this point. And when you're telling your story, I'm like, oh, I know an additional detail in there, right? Like I know where he was when he was doing this. I know like what else was going on in his life, like during that time. I wonder if he's going to talk about that. Right. And so there is this element of like, okay, well, I'm engaged. First of all, again, because we're friends. But if I didn't know you and I started listening from the very beginning, I'd be like, okay, I care like what happens to this person.
Oh,
right?
good. Okay.
Like I care. I want him to be successful. Like his head's in the right place. He cares deeply about the people around him.
Yeah.
Like what's going to happen next?
Cool.
Right?
Cool.
In fact, I think there could be more of that, right?
Yeah,
there could be more of like...
Gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, you gotta start somewhere. And there's also something that can happen about, like in this journey that you've had, like how can that connect like with your listeners in terms of like what they're going through? They don't need to be necessarily be an artist or like live in New York or whatever in order to say like I have had a similar journey.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
There are lessons that anyone can learn from anyone's life. I remember, and we sort of mentioned this before, but everyone has as big of a life as you. And then by you, I mean the ubiquitous you, like everyone, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has a huge life where the decisions they've made, the choices they've been able to make, they're visceral. Like they're a core part of who we are. But like, how can we learn from the big lives that other people have as well?
Yeah. So, you know, in saying that, you started part of that, part of the conversation by saying, you know, I've known you at this stage in your life.
Yeah.
So like, gosh, you say it out loud, it hurts.
Yeah,
it hurts my feelings too.
Yeah.
30 years.
Yeah.
So back then, right? So my vantage point of how we were, and I want to talk about that part, about that moment, that time in our lives.
Sure.
Okay. So I knew you were coming over. So I wanted to harken back to something really, really fun / funny.
Okay.
You ready?
No.
You ready? Okay, hold on.
All right. What is happening?
Let's see.
This is not going to be good.
You ready?
Yeah. Oh, God. You still have your All-American Singers t-shirt? Did you ever wear it? Because it looks in perfect condition.
Yeah, I've worn it.
Okay.
I've worn it.
God, the All-American Singers.
The All-American Singers. Yes. So the All-American Singers, just so you guys know, was, because it's no longer, it is a travel show, singing and dancing, kids just past high school age, I would say.
I'd say between it was between the ages of 18 and like 22, 18 and 23.
Yes.
I was 17 when I started in it.
17.
Yeah. And actually you knew me since I was 16 because...
Yes, we came through first season.
Yeah, exactly. So there were 2 seasons of the All-American Singers. The first one was because Chaz was in both of them.
Yeah.
Ish. Yeah. And the first one was when I was in high school and you came and performed.
Yes.
And one of my good friends from high school actually was also in it, which is why you came to Lancaster, Ohio in the first place.
Yeah, so we toured the country and stayed in host homes and we sang this positive show about choices and
Credos.
Yeah. Oh, the credos.
You know, you have a lot of choices to make in your life. You want to make the right ones. Which
he still knows it verbatim because he's a genius.
Which at the end of the day is good, right? It's good. It's
I don't know. Remember one. Can I tell you one that I remember?
Uh-huh.
And I don't know. no individual or set of circumstances can dictate how you think or act. It's a matter of personal choice.
Oh my God. It's so crazy how it's just like, and again, to the listener or the watcher here, it sounds innocuous. It's a great phrase, sure, it totally makes sense, but the memories you get from hearing that like over and over again, doing the show every day, where sometimes the words, you say it so much that it becomes meaningless, even when they're strong words and they're important things to think about.
Yeah. So yes, I knew you when you were a young, spry 16-year-old, and you were antsy and excited about being in the All American Singers because it was cool.
It was
your
cool.
friend was a part of it.
It was great.
And so that was fun. And then I left and I moved to Nashville. It was my first stint of finding myself as an adult. So I had 10 years in Nashville.
And everyone, he was a star in this. And so just to let you know a little bit more about this group, there were 10 guys and 10 girls like who were in this group, and they were from all over the United States.
Yes.
And in this group of people, you audition, there were like vocal auditions and dance auditions and all of that. Like he was a star in that, right? And so everyone in the group was like, okay, Chaz is gonna do amazing things, right? We can't wait to listen more. We can't wait to see more.
Yeah, thank you.
It was a great place to be fans of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was really a place where it was a coming of age, I guess.
Yeah.
Because that was the place where it was like, you're vacillating what you're doing after high school. If you're going to college, or maybe you're in a break on your first year of college, or whatever that may be. But we're just traveling around and kind of just getting to know each other, and we're appreciating each other's talents and stuff like that. So, but yeah, my first stint after that was Nashville. And then, those 10 years of that, and then New York. Now,
we all
your journey,
I think we all wanted to be in New York. We're always, yeah.
Especially you.
Yeah, I mean, I really did. Although my journey to New York was almost by chance. So, because after the All American Singers, I went to college. I went to the University of Michigan. Go Blue. And I remember it was
Congratulations on the national championship.
Yes. Hail to the victors. It was like my last semester in school, and I knew I was going to go to law school, not because I necessarily wanted to be a lawyer, but it was one of those professional programs where you didn't have to take a certain set of classes in order to qualify for it. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, actually, at the end of the day. I was interested in a lot of things. I took a lot of classes in a lot of different areas. I majored in 3 different things in college, and then I was like, what do I do with this now? Wow. So I was like, I'll go to law school.
Right.
That's ridiculous. More on that later. But my best friend Mandisa, she came over to my apartment with like some of my favorite beer and pictures of this apartment in New York City. And she was like, hey, I'm moving to New York. We need an additional roommate. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
All right. I just said all right. And then that was my entire life. That was the beginning of everything. Yeah. I ended up going to law school at Columbia. So I continued in New York, and I was an attorney for a while. After I figured out pretty soon that the law was not really for me, but there was no way I was going to be like a law school dropout at all. Like I had this great opportunity in front of me. I was going to see it through. Yeah. But even when I was an attorney, I was like, you know what? I feel like I'm just a mediocre attorney here. I feel like I wasn't, because when we're talking about like the All American Singers, right? I feel like we all enjoyed like in our own little worlds being the best. Right. We wanted to be stars. We wanted to be like shining lights, right?
Yeah.
And when you feel that light inside of yourself dim, like there is something that needs to change.
Yeah.
Right. And so like during my time, I was an attorney during the downturn in the market, and like from 2005 like on over the next like few years or several years, and during that time, I was able to like understand how businesses run, and I was able to understand how people, even at the executive level, are flawed in so many ways, but people are just trying to do the right thing. I mean, not necessarily, it's not really necessarily altruistic, but people are generally trying to do like what's right, like by them, by their companies, etc.
Sure.
And so I grew very interested in the people element of organizations. And you know what? I ended up getting my coaching certification so I could do some life coaching and executive coaching, because it works with my business, right? I was able to like work with these organizations, these companies, making sure that people were able to attribute the right value at the right times, based on what was authentic for them and what they wanted to do and achieve. And I was also able just to have fun, having conversations like this.
I just wanted to take this moment to thank each and every one of you all for joining me right here in my living room. I know it's a different format than your typical podcast, but this is something that felt really natural and organic for me to be able to share my most authentic self with you. The people who I've invited to my home are people that allow me to think a little bit differently, and they also inspire me. And I hope they do for you as well. So if you would, hit the subscribe button, leave me a comment and a question. Till then, let's continue this conversation.
And I've always wondered, because I've always known you to be such a personable person and like a lively person and an energetic and fun person. So when I heard lawyer, I'm like,
what is that? What's happening?
But then I'm kind of going, okay, all right, he's a genius. So obviously he's going to use that intellect to do something intellectual. But I'm like, but I don't want his soul
really
starving for the fun and happiness that he exudes everywhere he goes. So I'm glad that you found that happy medium where you're able to help people, and the life coaching thing. Speaking of life coaching, there was a moment in history and time, I would say probably like 5-10 years ago, that there was like a boom of like life coaches just coming out of the woodwork. It's like, what was that all about?
To be fair, life coaching was such a new thing that there was no real certification. There was no real rigor when it came to it.
Right.
And so everyone felt like, oh, this sounds fun. This sounds cute. I'll do that. I'm just going to call myself that, because that's all it takes to be a life coach. Just call yourself one, right? Which is a little ridiculous. But to be honest, like the ease of it made it like attractive, right? It's like, oh, that's something else. That's something I could identify as. And so I don't have to identify myself as this other thing that feels brutally inauthentic.
Right.
However, there is a ton of rigor that comes with it, right? When you're certified through whatever certification, I got a certification through NYU. You learn about like organizational philosophy. You learn about like psychology. You learn about all these things and how people work together, and how like any decision that you make in your life, it rarely just has to do with you. It has to do with all of these other factors, like external and internal.
Sure.
And so like being able to actually work with people and do that, it's actually made me very much more aware of the agency that I have in my own life. And how just by making an adjustment here, it can make huge differences down the line. In fact, one thing that I always used to do, because I'm no longer a practicing like life coach or executive coach. I've continued onto the people side of things. I'm now a recruiting leader.
But I want to put a bookmark in this.
Actually, let's talk about it right now. Because whenever I would start an engagement with any client, and this would be both for executive coaching and life coaching, I would sort of walk people through like a whole life model, which sounds ridiculous. However, it's just a way to like break up and compartmentalize all the pieces of your life in order to understand like what your current goals are in each of those areas, if you have any. What are your tolerances, i.e. things that you're just putting up with, and what are your incompletes, things that you have started but haven't finished. Once you're able to basically just do that work and name and claim all of these things that are currently happening. Love that.
I love that.
All these things that you're currently doing in your life, you'll actually be able to very clearly see different themes in everything in your life, right? And you can start like brainstorming, like, okay, so here are the three things, the three patterns that I'm following across like, my finances, my personal life, my learning journey, my relationships, all of that. There tend to be just a few patterns, right? And if you're able to like create, initiate, and then follow through with new behaviors with those 2 or 3 things, suddenly you see changes across the board.
That makes sense.
And that momentum gets you going to say, okay, now I can make bigger changes. Like, what do I actually want to do that I haven't already started? Right? What are my hopes and my dreams? I know that sounds like kooky a little bit, but at the end of the day, like there are things that, that maybe you've thought that, oh, this is something that I want to do, but no, it's so far away from what I'm currently doing. Is this something that I really want to do? Is this something that I even want to take the time to explore?
Right.
Well, this provides you the opportunity to take the time to explore it, right? And see if it's actually something that you want to continue doing, or if it's something you say, you know what, that's fine. It used to be a dream of mine. It's okay that it's not anymore, but I'm able to move with, full momentum, like towards the thing I actually want to do.
So I love that. So with that said, this podcast was an undertaking, right? There was a lot of thought going into it. There were a lot of things that I had to get over myself.
Like what?
To get through, right? And because
Well, first of all, I love that you said get through, because when people say get over things, I'm like, you're not working through anything. You don't learn anything. If you get through it and you feel like the barbs as you're kind of like fighting your way through it, trucking through it, like unless you feel that, you don't really understand what the journey is anyway.
Yeah, no. So there were a lot of things I had to get through as it relates to my natural homing pigeon as a person, which is I'm all about instant gratification. I've chosen careers, yes, plural,
the best
to act. You know, when I take a photo, I want to see it right away.
Oh yeah, sure.
I want to see the edit. When I post that, I want to get immediate response or appreciation for that thing that I created. When I'm doing, you know, singing, you know, I'll sing and I'll do a project and I'll get feedback from the client.
Yeah.
And or I'll see it on television and I see the fruit of my labor. So I've chosen all these different things. I believe it's part of me and how I move through the world. And so this podcast, I had to get through that mindset because this is a long game.
Yeah.
And I understand the long game from the standpoint of going, okay, this may not yield, this may not reach the person that it's intended to yet. It may take a year for it to hit its target audience, its target person, or to impact the life that I've created this to be. So I took the hard road on creating this podcast by starting alone. I didn't start with a buddy. I didn't start, hey, let's do a podcast. Let's double our audiences. Let's get more people right away. I wanted to start in a way that wasn't popular.
Well, this isn't the first time. This isn't the first time that you've done something like this, right? Listen to the podcast about you writing the song for your son, right? Because I remember in the story when you were saying that, you know, it would have been great to get that instant gratification, right? To put it out there and have like a ton of downloads and have everyone like talking about it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like you want it to be something for your son that he can listen to, right? And that's the most important thing. Yeah. Right. And so like it's interesting because in this podcast that you have, you're seeing that interplay between the desire for instant gratification, but understanding that that's not everything.
Right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And that's, you know, that's the part of me that I'm the appreciation that I have now is the process that doesn't require anyone else. So like there's a formula. Like the first season, you know, it's going to be 10 episodes and it was going to, you know, pretty much introduce me to the world. Because like you said earlier, you know, if I didn't know you, I would want to know what's next for this person. Right. So that's what I'm kind of hoping and trying to glean from that first 10 episodes. But then the next one is like, okay, I want to qualify those first 10 things that are talking about all of my different creative pursuits, my parent stuff, and everything in between. I want to qualify that with people that are experts in their chosen space, or friends who knew me when, or all these different components that kind of qualify the first season. So then there's a sense of progress and evolution.
I love that you're talking about trusting the process because, you know, when it comes to coaching, I mean, going back to that a little bit, like, with coaching, like say you have like a series of 12 sessions, right? Like there is going to be a time between session 5 and session 8 or 5 and 9 where you feel like nothing is really happening, but there are things that are happening. You have to trust the process. It is the gunk that you have to go through before real change is made. But you have to trust that process. You have to know that there's going to be something, even if you don't truly understand what's going to happen, like at the end of that particular tunnel, like you have to trust that something is happening. Right.
It's not in my nature.
Though. I know. Like you want to check it out and you want to be like, all right, this is the impact that it had. This is the value it was.
And you know, for me, I'm like, when I go back to my through line of what this really means ultimately, just like the song I wrote for Gio, this podcast will almost serve as that sort of legacy piece too. Because in our generation, we don't have this type of media to leave behind. We're now in a place to where we can think about whatever I create right now is going to follow me forever. Unlike our parents that just harken back to an old photo album, this is the new version. So if this podcast serves as anything, if it helps a few people along the way, great. But at the end of the day, you know, especially the way that AI is going right now, if there's a moment to where, you know, you could run this whole podcast through some sort of AI machine, you can duplicate me and recreate me because everything about this podcast is about my life. So if my son ever really, like,
that is scary. It is
scary.
Cool, but it's scary.
It is scary.
Yeah.
But at least I know that I'm living my true, authentic person. This isn't something that I do. This is not taking a photo. This isn't doing a jingle. This isn't, creating a piece of content. This is who I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a total difference. And that's why I found value in doing the podcast. Granted, we're in that place right now to where this is one of the more tangible, long form pieces of content.
Sure.
But I'm like, okay, I'll play along if this is what it takes.
So what are some things that you have learned, like in this podcast journey, something that you weren't expecting to learn, like when this all started? And I know you had an openness for being like, okay, let's see like how this goes. Let's take the time, trust the process, all of that.
Yeah.
But what are some things that you've already gleaned that you weren't expecting to?
Well, I would say consistency.
Tell me more about that.
And patience, which you've pretty much articulated. Consistency is something that I lack because, no, I do. And I mean, I think I ain't the only one, y'all. I mean, y'all know y'all. I mean, come on, stop playing. But consistency because for all the things that I articulated earlier, I need to see it now. If I don't see it now, maybe I'm putting my energy in the wrong place. Maybe this isn't the thing I need to be putting my energy into. So I'll move on to something else. Now, granted, I may have stopped on a few ventures that were on the precipice of about to do the thing. But I stopped because of my instinct, my nature cut me short of that blessing, that opportunity, that, whatever. So
it's tough. That's tough.
And so the consistency thing, I'm learning that because I know with the consistency, and I'm not a goal setter, which sucks. I'm not a goal setter. So I'm not thinking I'm doing this podcast because by the third one, I should have 1 million followers. I'm not thinking, that's not my goal.
Yeah.
I just need to get it out there.
Yeah, that in of itself is a goal. Right. When you say you're not a goal setter, tell me more about that because I feel like you've been doing a lot of things where you're like, I want to do this and now I've done it, right? I want to do X and I know you're right. And I know you're saying that like, oh, you've been in situations where you're almost the precipice of doing something like fantastic and you back up. This is not an unusual story. Like everyone has had that sort of journey, right? And you have to think to yourself, all right, well, is that just like the fear that, oh, that could have been something? Or do you need to think back to that moment and be like, no, like given what I knew at that point, that was the decision that I was ready to make.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And I never have any regrets about those moments of me cutting things off or quitting too early or anything like that. But at the same time, I get mad at myself because I like to think I'm self-aware. Yeah. Because a lot of the things I've done was alone. There hadn't been, collaborations. There hadn't been a tribe that I've kind of formed. There hadn't been long-term friends because a lot of the moving I've done through my life has been solo. Yeah. So if I didn't know how to do it, I learned how to do it. And I did it myself because even this podcast, I set up a light, set up a couple of cameras.
Love it.
I look
amazing. Anyway, sorry.
I press record and sit down and talk. Yeah. Right. Fortunately, I'm able to now have people come into my life, like my guy over here, Mikkel, to be able to just simply oscillate the camera to both of us. I mean, how minimal that may seem, that's important to me. Sure. But I didn't know how to ask for that because I've never been put in that position to ask for help. So when he's almost insisting, I'm like, those are the kind of people you need in your life.
Gosh, you know what? When you're talking about, sorry, sorry, this is going to go down a weird path, and you might want to edit this out. I have no idea, but no, there's something to be said because earlier, before we started recording, you were talking about the journey of like making it in New York City, right? And we were talking about like why this place is so important for both of us for some of the same reasons, some different reasons, etc. And then you're talking about like who your tribe is and who your people are. Recently, a good friend of mine, you know her actually. I won't share the name here, but you know this person. She almost died. She ended up getting bacterial pneumonia, and she was in sepsis, and she ended up going to the hospital and was like 30 minutes away from death, right?
Yeah.
And she's fine now. Everything is great. She's super healthy. She's arguably in better shape than she was before. I mean, amazing, right? But like as she was in the ambulance on the way there, she texted a group of like 12 people, right? And she texted us being like, hey, I'm gonna go to the hospital. If you want to stop by, that could be cool. And then a few hours later, she said, okay, so I'm actually gonna be put under for several days.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're still welcome to come visit. All of us, I don't know how we did it. We did it without even like talking to each other. We ended up on this system. Like she was never alone during like her week in that hospital.
Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, her mom was close by her side almost the entire time, and her husband, etc. But like we were always there. Right. And it struck me. I was like, wait, who are my people? Who are the people that I would text like in a moment like this, where even when I am not in a state to understand that I'm being taken care of, like who are the people like who would be part of that group, right? At the end of the day, like having the people who support you and people who know you, even if they know parts of your life, right? And who will be there in the good times, the bad.
Yeah.
But people want to help each other, like, and now that you've experienced this idea of like being able to like ask for help or ask for collaboration, right? I don't say help is not the word. Like ask for collaboration and support in creative efforts. I feel like it's gonna unlock and continues to unlock these opportunities for you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. But dude, our friendship spans for 30 years. I still can't get over that.
Yeah.
But I will gladly accept that.
Like, so there was a tour bus, and there was assigned seating on the tour bus, and we sat next to each other on that tour bus. Yeah.
We were seatmates.
Buddies. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Like, this started from the very beginning. But yeah, like looking back on that group, like it is not a surprise to me that you and I, and then like Dante. Like we are the ones that ended up in New York City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But dude, with that said, this has been so awesome. Just having you here, just having a different perspective of our friendship, where you've grown, where I've grown, how we know each other, but how there's still a through line of our consistency as friends. So I appreciate you.
Yeah. I appreciate you as well. Thank you so much for having me. And
absolutely.
And thank you for doing this podcast, because I think it's, even though I've known you for this entire time, like being able to understand like the nuggets that really drove decision making. I mean, it's something that interests me in my professional career, and so of course I'm interested in how my friends deal with that as well.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Well, listen, you've heard from my friend Amit. Y'all follow him, all the things. He may be your next life coach or your next whoever, but it's been my pleasure once again to be with you. And without further ado, I guess I'll say goodbye for now. Have a wonderful day.